Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Dr. Mo Show, where today I'm chatting with Shaun. Now, I know what I've seen from you, Shaun. You are a mental resilience expert, but what I want to know outside of behind your social media, the title of this podcast is Health is Everything. In your past, how did you get to be a mental resilience expert? Nobody gets there easily.
That's for sure. I want to start by thanking you for having me on. It's definitely a pleasure to finally get to meet you in person. I've been watching a lot of your stuff too, and a lot of inspiring energy. I dig it. And you're certainly right. I definitely had a rocky road growing up. It started with just kind of like a pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. I witnessed a very rough divorce through my parents' marriage, got broken up. It was ups and downs. Kids were involved, used as pawns. Looking back on it now, 30 something years. And um, yeah, I was just in and out of trouble all the time. I was struggling with emotion. I was struggling with um, figuring out who I really was, who I really wanted to be. Uh, Definitely lots of different types of uh, cries for help. Through poor grades, through acting out, through being violent in sports. Obviously, you can now see that I've got this beautiful gym behind me, but that was it was a rough road getting to where I am, and this kind of atmosphere for sure turned my life around. It probably saved my life. Um, and I just struggled. I struggled with my mental health. I struggled with what people call problematic behaviors, and learned how to turn them into resilient behaviors. I was angry for a lot of reasons growing up, and about 17 years old, I met a guy playing music, doing the drugs and rock and roll type of thing when I was getting out of high school. And I just wanted to do something different with my life. I knew that school was hard on me. It was probably the end of the road. If I was going to graduate high school, like that would be it for me. Like there's no further education. There was no, forward thinking in my mind of going to some kind of institution, university, whatever have you. So I was full blown into the School of Hard Knocks. I was doing culinary as a profession. I had been into different high schools and finally found a little bit of solace in culinary and getting a job and kind of breaking out of the normal scene going to a vocational high school. And that was just it for me. I was going to work and do my thing. I was always into sports, physical sports, hockey, football, and martial arts. I started fighting, and it was my hobby. It was a passion. I went through ups and downs, and finally at 17, I met a kid that was like, "Dude, you're angry for no reason. We're playing this rock and roll music, and you're just angry about things that are outside of your control." And he gave me this book called Zen Guitar, and I held on to it for many, many years, and I ended up passing it along because it meant so much to me. It changed my perspective so much, and it got me into this different kind of Zen type of mindset and gave me something kind of different to start chasing after. And between that and martial arts, it was a newfound way of thinking. At 17, I decided that I was going to adopt this kind of more Buddhist way of life, this kind of Zen mindset, and look for more happiness, more gratitude, more little things, small wins in my everyday life. I was going to start competing in martial arts, MMA, and get into shape. I was going to stop working for other people. I rented out a small kitchen in the back of a bar, but I still had other things to overcome, even though I was getting better. It was a journey, it was a marathon, and I'm still doing work. I'm still in the middle of it. I'm still turning pages and hitting milestones and creating new chapters of my life. So I think the work is continuous. I think that it continues to evolve, but I think that I've just been tapped into this internal self for so long. And about 25 years old, I hit another speed bump. The cooking thing fell through, and I got into some big trouble. The restaurant that I was working at, renting a kitchen out of, the property was under surveillance. There was a whole bunch of things that happened at bars going down, bikers and girls and parties, and everything was in and out of the place. It was madness. And I was there putting in my 120 hours a week and got hung up, had to go to court, had to do all this, that, the other thing. I lost everything because it was in violation of all these leases and all this kind of stuff. There was thousands of dollars in legal fees, all kinds of different headaches, and I basically lost everything except for the gym that I was going to, the friendship that I had with the guy that owned it. He offered to back me and help me open my own school. About a year into having the business, he committed suicide. He figured out that he needed to pass on his legacy. He had taken care of all of these other pieces of his life, lined them all up, and figured out how he could be all set and do what he wanted to do and release himself from his demons. And it left me young, kind of back on my feet. So grateful for that, but heartbroken because my friend and mentor, this person that taught me about all these kind of things like honor and pride, took his own life. And there's all these kind of taboos about suicide, talking about it. And it just was something that I had struggled with in my own youth, in my own development. And I thought that martial arts would just be the answer. But again, there's just more evolution, more self work, more inner work to be done. And then putting those kind of things into real life actions that gave me the opportunity to dig my heels in and do the rest of the work on myself, do the work that he left behind. It gave me an opportunity to kind of honor him, but still be able to move on and find new paths and new avenues. And it took me into new mentorships, finding new martial arts trainers and people to work out with, Later, then I started doing work with a group of guys. They call themselves a mock, and the head of the organization is the world's leading blade instructor. He teaches a lot of personal protection. He's trained people from the CIA to the FBI, all the other three-letter organizations you could think of. He's trained bodyguards, mercenaries, people from the White House, and people that are in planes protecting you in the skies, and people that are hunting down bad guys off the payroll and under the radars. And he invited me to go with him to Thailand. It was my first international experience. He brought me to train with all these different kind of specialists, and it just opened my eyes to the global world. Training with those guys showed me this really different perspective of fighting and how to break things down tactically, how to separate your emotions and your will to survive with the things that are important and inherently you need to do to be able to control those kind of uh, biological mechanisms within yourself. Pushed me into changing what I was doing in the gym, changed what I was doing in my business, grew into more combat sports, started doing my own development in hypnosis, sports psychology, all these kind of pre-fight mentalities, which I learned about while I was doing this kind of personal protection work. I then transferred over into the sport fighting world, where typically people are getting trained to do this sport, but it takes a lot more hands-on and personal development to get into the pre-fight type of mentalities where most coaches and most fighters have failed to have the opportunity to work at that. I just think that my upbringing and the events that happened in my life that led me to being a successful business owner, a professional Muay Thai fighter who's been able to fight internationally, and now a coach who's grown his gym and the method that I teach with to bring young people from the ground up to be able to bring them to fight for championships. You can see them all hanging up on my walls now, bringing these kids to fighting internationally and passing on this whole type of winning mindset and goal oriented lifestyle.
Your journey from being a teenager who is angry at things, how did he phrase it? Angry at things beyond your control.
Mm.
And then you had a mentor who literally got his affairs in order and then left. And I can feel your respect for that. And the my podcast is called Health is Everything, but I really it's like my lifestyle medicine practice. We lure people in with medication and then we coach them to death because it is about the mindset, and that piece is missed. It's missed in career counseling, it's missed in athletics. It's not missed in athletics actually more than almost any other space, I think, because that's just, I think, convention. I mean, I remember way back when in seventh grade going to volleyball camp. I played volleyball for 35 seconds. I was a swimmer by trade. But I remember that was the first time visualization was introduced, and that was always in athletics. Now, I mean, I've gone through medical school, I've gone through graduate school, I've gone through more school than I care to admit. But exactly like you said, it's an institution. It pushes you down a very narrow road, which is good to achieve an end, right? You don't want somebody cutting you open that hasn't gone through a very regimented series of steps. However, most of my colleagues that are still in traditional medicine, for example, or my patients who are just scratching the surface at health and trying to get the excess 150, 200 pounds off of their frame. They don't even see that mindset's a component. They're like, it's the once I get here, my physician colleagues even are, once I retire, then I'll relax. Then I will be happy, which is why I wrote the first book, Happy First, because that's not how it works. And you've seen that, you've lived that. And you had this mentor who definitely left a legacy in you, which is amazing. But you see the value in taking that legacy isn't just a one-time deal. It's not just a, hey, here's your paycheck, go out into the world and make a good life. No, it is a day in, a day out work in progress. You're going to hit more roadblocks. We all hit more roadblocks. And that's hard for those of us who have been in that pit and understand what it's like to be in that pit where it's dark and it feels like there's no way out. I think some of the things that you've said that you've just completely climbed out again and again. Now the pit also gets a little lower every time. Hopefully we learn that. But we're going to stumble. We're going to fall. And that legacy that you are leaving, helping these kids, teaching them that no, when your mind is right, the rest will follow, not the other way around. It's huge.
It's huge. And a lot of times you're creating your own pits, you're creating your own despair, you're creating your own problems by either the wrong mindset, the wrong environment, or the wrong type of perspective. Nobody's giving you the tools to be able to like switch those lenses, so to speak. I think that's like super important to be able to do for yourself and be able to do for other people is give them the ability to switch perspectives and say, hey, look, here's what you're seeing and here's what you're saying. But from my perspective, it looks like this. And from somebody that's outside of our world, it looks like this. So here's all the components that we got to start assessing and figure out like, why is that making you feel a certain way? Where are the constraints that we're trying to alleviate? And it works with your personal life, it works with your sports and further education pieces. I mean, it's like all personal development stuff.
I agree wholeheartedly. And that's a lot of what I've learned growing through difficulties is that you have to change the lens. If you want to look through shit colored glasses, you can. You can absolutely put those lenses on and look at the world. You know, may I suggest waking up and reading the news? That is a surefire way to screw up your day right there.
Right on. Yep.
I haven't watched the news since 2009, unless it's on for some other reason, that I'm actually looking for a story or whatever. Because, I was a resident and I got home and I was watching the news. I apparently always watched the news back then, and I didn't even put that together until much later. And over half of the stories on the news were my patients that day in the ER. And I thought, number one, I lived through this once. I smelled it once. I don't need to do it again. One involved fire, and that's like a very strong memory for me. I don't need to see it again. And the news, of course, sensationalizes it, gets it wrong. So if you're going to form your own perspective, you've got to. Somebody told me once, you live your life through rose-colored glasses. You don't live in the real world. And I said, yes, I do live it with rose-colored glasses, but I beg to differ. My world is just as real as yours. And that's what people can't see. I think that's big. I think we do create our world. We create every bit of it. And
For
that's
sure.
it's deeper. It's that's important, I think, to realize that even from a science perspective, if anyone has ever even dabbled in quantum physics, yes, I've one of my hobbies is studying quantum physics. It is what it is. But the world is energy. I mean, that's again, that's why I wrote that book. The world is made up of energy. We are made up of the very things that are the stars. So how can we use that in our daily lives to change the environment we're in? Like you said, sometimes it's the wrong environment. You're around the wrong people. Like when you were caught at 25 in a terrible situation, and things happen insidiously, right? It's one more bite. It's one more, oh, let me do this first. It's one more pushing this off. And then next thing you know, you're under this mountain of tasks. You're under this mountain of muck that feels like you can't get out of your own creation, granted. So, say you have a kid come to you, brand new kid, new to your gym, and you see you in him when you were 13, 14. How do you even explain to someone that, how do you crack that door open that what he sees about his parents' relationship, for example, doesn't have to be something he carries with him?
Yeah, that's a super that's super tough. Um, I think that what I try to create for them is an environment where they can let all those things go. And they have kind of this place where they have to be in the moment. Their parents fighting or the weight of maybe something that you have got into with your parents, a conflict between siblings, whatever have you, you have to be extremely present while you're doing what we're doing in here. All of the drills, all of the activities, they force you to be mindful. That's something that I harp on, that it's less about the moves for kids to learn and more about the tools for integrating skill. Because then when you take the mask off of kickboxing and it's a fun activity, you get to high five your friends and you get to punch and kick and it exerts energy and you get in shape and all these other valuable things that go with being on a team, doing an individual sport, having the ability to mold those two things where it's just you in there, but there's other people here that are supporting you. So it gives you all around this whole environment where you can walk through the doors and leave all your problems at the door. And it gives you a way to, like I said, integrate skill. When you take the mask of punching and kicking off, now you have a way that you can be mindful. You can do practices deliberately that's on purpose with purpose. You can do things as your authentic self, and you can be confident in your ability to kind of stand up for your beliefs and your friends and family and all these kind of things. So even when you hear people kind of giving you this kind of, whether it's people at school or you're hearing it from parents or you're hearing parents go at it, it gives you this ability to kind of separate and do what's good for yourself and do that kind of internal work, even though maybe the things around you are on fire, and it gives you the place to have an outlet physically and mentally.
I think that's incredible. The last podcast guest I had, we talked about how movement is real is healing because
For sure.
it's the use of the physical vessel we've been given to express yourself. If you're a big thinker, how do you, because the way you phrased it is the voices are coming from outside, right? Parents, and usually it's rumination about a situation you had or something that's going on externally to you. For a lot of us, that voice becomes internalized. how would you have someone start to change that internal voice? Because it goes with you.
Uh, yeah, I think recognizing it and writing down even short bits. Uh, I carry a notebook with me all the time and I jot down every morning. That's how I start my day. You mentioned about putting yourself in the right state as soon as you wake up. As soon as I wake up, I thought about whatever it was before I went to bed. I wake up and I start my day with a cup of coffee, writing about what my thoughts are, what my thoughts were from yesterday, what my thoughts are for the day are going to be, and what I plan to do with the rest of my day and into the next. And maybe it goes well, maybe it goes poorly, but it gets all this kind of junk out of my head. And it helps me get into a state that I want to be in. And I'll write that at the end. This is how I want to be. This is what I want to be doing. And this is how I want to feel while I'm doing it. And if things start coming into my day or into my field of vision or whatever it is that are going against what I have written down for that day, get them out of here. Get them out of my way,
Okay.
right? So just starting to recognize the talks that you're having with yourself, because my partner in Switzerland, she and I are developing a course for fighters specifically, but one of the points in the preparing yourself to get into fighting is that you talk to yourself more than you talk to anybody through the whole day, and nobody talks to you more than you talk to yourself
Yeah.
throughout the whole day. So it's imperative to recognize what you're saying, to start jotting these things down, because sometimes you're doing things and saying things subconsciously that you forgot about. You're driving along, you're doing your stuff, and things are leaking into your head, and they go and they come and they come and they go. And you have no clue how impactful it is, how much you're saying to yourself or how little you're valuing yourself. And just understanding where your value is, understanding where you're having small wins, understanding where you're saying bad things to yourself, and then implementing the small changes throughout your day, hour, whatever it is that you can start course correcting.
I'm going to play devil's advocate. What if I deserve the bad things that my brain is telling me?
What is I would ask you to describe what that means.
So if I've done things in the past that deserve shame, for example,
They warrant bad karma, you might say.
sure.
Sure. Okay.
So, but I deserve these miserable comments that I hate myself. I don't deserve to succeed because of X, Y, and Z in my past.
Hmm. Yeah.
Thoughts?
That would that would bring me to recall some things that I read about in more of like a Buddhist philosophy, where this kind of what if I deserve it is based on almost like a merit system, where you're gonna start giving and doing more good to kind of develop these good merits that outweigh all this bad karma or bad merits that you've developed, right? So that's how I think about it, in like almost something that's more tangible. In my mind, it's more tangible. I'm saying it's physically intangible, of course, but in my mind, it gives me something like, oh, I'm stacking up all these good merits, and then all this good karma is going to come to me because I'm doing all these good things for people. And then when I'm doing bad things, it's it's like I'm never gonna like get right, because the bad things are always going to develop bad karma, which is always going to develop more negativity, which is going to stack it. So if you never change into doing more good merits, more good deeds, more kind of positive affirmations, more kind of um, looking for things to be grateful for and changing those lenses, like we talked about earlier, then you're going to be in rough shape and you're just going to be snowballing all these bad merits, so to speak, and all this bad karma, so it was, and all these kind of bad energy and bad juju and whatever kind of words you want to slap on there. But it's essentially like you got to switch those lenses, you got to switch those perspectives, you got to start saying, like, hey, look, I'm not washing the dishes to get attention. I'm washing the dishes because it's gonna fucking feel good to do something for everybody else. And doing that with good intention, like I said before, doing things deliberately on purpose with purpose, that means doing it with intention. If you're doing things to get stuff, then that's bad, right? Like essentially, like you're emitting this energy into the universe, like you spoke about earlier. And deep down, like if you're doing stuff to get likes or if you're doing stuff because that's the true value you're trying to put back into the world, right? Like, are you trying to do the dishes so somebody's like, oh, like the dishes got done, like, good job, Billy? Like, or are you trying to do them so that you're alleviating some kind of constraint in your household, whether it's stress or having enough dishes or having the ability to have another meal smoothly or whatever these cases might be, right? Like you can put your own type of context to it, but it's important that you are like living by these things instead of just kind of doing them for the likes, so to speak.
I love that about putting your own context on things. We make up the context with everything. So why not make it a good one, right? Instead of saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, my the first 20 years of my life were terrible. I did X, Y, and Z. I deserve everything bad that happens to me going forward." Instead, take that, well, the first 20 years I was kind of an asshole. All right. Let's try to make the next 80 and really be of service to my family, to the world. Like you said, put out value to the world. I come across quite a few people who will say they can't afford something, for example. And one of my favorite things to do with clients is to say, okay, well, if you right now you don't see the money coming in that you would like to have to do whatever, take your skills, take your ambitions, take your passions. What value can you place in the world? That's how you have abundance come back. And like you said, it's not for getting likes, it's what value can I put into the world? I try to put at least 3 times the value of what I charge. That's kind of my MO because I always want to put more and more value out. Granted, we all do have to put food on the table, but and if you don't pay, you don't pay attention. So there's that. But we ascribe the context. It's Shakespeare. Nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So why not make it a good one?
Yeah. And what type of people are you typically running across in your business now? You're still doing the work in the medical field as well as doing like personal development coaching and stuff like that?
Yep, I've been a coach. It's funny. I'm finally owning up to this fact because I've done essentially mindset coaching for over 25 years. It's always on the side. Again, like even in my medical practice, I don't do the medical care part anymore. Other people do that part. I'm the one coaching. I'm the one, doing the mindset work, coaching the staff, coaching the patients. In Dr. Mo coaching on that side, I help people navigate their fat loss journeys, which is also there's actually an entire component to my coaching called the financial aspect of wellness, because that's something people don't address. You've got to allow finances, you've got to allow resources to do the things, to build the things. Where are you putting your money? Put your money where your mouth is. Are you spending money for a gym membership or are you spending it on the extra bottle of wine for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, the Cheetos.
Right? I mean, exactly. It's Where are you allocating your mental resources, your financial resources? What value are you putting back? I mean, I have people that'll ask me a question that's very specific. I had one recently related to her health concerns. And I thought three steps beyond that. I said, I want you to understand this. I want us to learn this together. Then you go out, you form a support group for people in your situation, and you teach them these things. That's how
Yeah,
we make a difference.
for sure. For sure.
And it's not normal. It's not, I don't fit in a box for sure. It's
Yeah,
not normal. It's not mainstream. But recently I've kind of stopped caring that it's not mainstream because it's what we need. You know,
yeah, that's been my MO for a long time. Go against the grain. It's got me a lot of places. It's got me a lot of cool places. It's definitely kept me out of the 9 to 5s for a long time. Uh, it got me into some trouble, but um,
okay.
I guess it was kind of fun. I definitely have no regrets, and it brought me through those kind of struggles that got me where I am today. Um, I actually just r recently retired from professional fighting, and this will be my first full year of leaning into being a business owner. I've been in business for 10 years. I started doing business a year ago. So I'm really loving this kind of new fit for myself. I've really leaned into the development of other people. I now have 8 apprentices and an assistant who work for me, work with me, and build with me. And I have been able to develop new programs, spread the love a lot more. I recently wrote a book. I have this whole blueprint where I've drawn the parallels for getting out and doing things in high performance situations, specifically getting out and doing public speaking or big presentations. I've drawn the parallels between fighting and public speaking. I have this whole mindset blueprint that goes with that. So I'd like to be able to offer it to any of your coaching clients. If anybody's watching this podcast, they'd like to get in and see some of that stuff that the fighters are doing and how it kind of aligns with business professionals. I was lucky enough to get in with some high level business guys, and the things that they saw after watching me fight professionally was like, why isn't this guy in the office teaching us how to get up, and why isn't this guy teaching us how to have nerves of steel and this and that? So those kind of comments and feedbacks gave me the ability to get up with the confidence to start developing this book and develop this course and get it into publication. So if anybody that would like to have that blueprint, I'd like to be able to offer it to you and your guests. Um,
Yeah, how do they get in touch with you to get a hold of your resources? What's the easiest, fastest way for them to start elevating that mindset?
I am on LinkedIn under my full name, Shaun Schubert, and I also put my Instagram handle in this Zoom call. So I believe that you'll be able to have it. I'm not sure if you'll be able to repost it or
Yep.
however you might be
We'll
framing it out, it'll
repost.
still be in there. But my Instagram is where I'm doing a lot of socializing. I'm getting more business professionals from having a big presence on LinkedIn now, but I do have a real big following on my Instagram. So I appreciate you, Mo, helping me out and putting my link into the details or the
Yep.
chats or putting it at the bottom of the screen there. But that's where you're going to get me the fastest.
Yeah, we will. We'll put it in the show notes. We'll make sure that everyone can get a hold of you because especially on for my healthcare providers out there, we're launching a software product shortly that it's a patient tracking system and a patient record system. But if we could get your mindset into the healthcare profession, it would just break the world open, I think, and that would
That would
be
be super cool. I actually just was talking to Boston Scientific about doing some uh, meetings with their teams in 2025 too. They're actually waiting for the last round of drafts to be done on my book to be able to send them over something
great.
they can give it to the big wigs up in the offices to do. But it will be good for all kinds of different teams to be able to get in tune with themselves because fighting in a gym is an individual sport. You get in there and there's nobody but you, but you need to have all these kinds of bonds and relationships with your coaches, with your teammates, with spectators. You want to grow fans. You got to be able to do business with promoters and sell tickets and put yourself out there. So there's all kinds of things that you have to do to be a well-rounded fighter and somebody that's doing it professionally, as well as somebody that's in the business world doing it professionally. You have to have all these well-rounded strategies and personal tactics to be able to implement when the going gets tough. Fighting is more than getting in there with gloves on.
Yeah.
When when you're tired, when you want to quit, when you want to give up, when you're getting smashed around, when you're all banged up and you want to give up, that's what real fighting is. When you got to dig down, that's what real fighting is. Fighting is not throwing punches and kicks and beating somebody up or like having a good time. That's not a fight. That's that's something else.
It's
You might
breakfast.
be right. So it's really like a real fight in your personal life or in the ring or wherever it is. Like
Mhm.
that comes from real personal development, real pieces of you where you're like, man, I'm tired. I don't want to get out of bed. Man, these kids are screaming. Man, I haven't eaten all day. Man, I never got a break. Man. Yeah, well, guess what, dude? That's what fighting is. You want to fight for it? Let's go. You want to give up? Go get something to eat. You want to give up? Sleep in. You want to give up? You know what I mean? Put your kids in front of an iPad or a screen or like you get what I'm saying? Like
Yep. What do you want to fight
that's
for? That's the question, is what do
it,
you want
man.
to fight for?
That's it. So that's what I'm really trying to pass on to people is that the punching and kicking, like that's an activity, but it's separate from the mindset that goes with it. And that's something that through fighting, I can now pass on to doctors, nurses, paramedics, firefighters, police officers, military personnel, whomever, business guys, CEOs. The last person that I worked with to do public speaking, he was going to fly to Vegas to talk in front of 10,000 people about selling security space to GE Aerospace. It's insane, like what do you want to do? What do you want to fight for? What are his promotion, his family, his his career was depending on him going out and becoming a team leader and delivering this speech to everybody in his company or whatever the branch was that he was talking to. Like if it's not worth it to you, pass,
Yeah.
right? But if you're fighting for your family, if you're fighting for your career, if you're fighting for more, if you're fighting for better, then that's the work you got to do.
I think that is the absolute perfect statement to end on. Shaun, I can't thank you enough. Remember, go find Shaun on LinkedIn. Also on Instagram. I will put the Instagram handle in the show notes. So thank you guys. Thank you, Shaun. I'm sure you and I will chat soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Super, super great to meet you, Bo.
All right. We'll chat soon.